everyone, welcome to episode number 22 of the Bill Podcast, and today we'll be going through Secure Shell, also commonly known as SSH. Now, throughout our development process, I have been using SSH to either log into a remote web server or even some computer in my home network. So understanding SSH and also the authentication process and secure copy and key generation is so much better for our daily web development or building process in general. So let's look at some secure shell definitions. If you go to the Wikipedia page, it is a cryptographic network protocol for basically secure data communication. But more importantly, if you go to the usage, we will also see that SSH is typically used to log into a remote machine and execute commands. It's as if you are getting access via securely to another machine sitting somewhere in the same network, and you can execute basically any commands. Alright, so in the development process, I also use SSH in terms of GitHub. So you might be using GitHub and they might ask you to kind of generate a new SSH key. And also I would like to introduce you to the manual for OpenSSH so that we can get a better understanding of some of the commands related to SSH. And lastly, there is also a website called Fun with SSH, which I will link to the show notes. And this also kind of tells us how to execute some similar commands in SSH and SCP and so on. So it's definitely a very useful skill to know what is SSH and some of the principles behind it so that we can remotely access any machine or web server. So let's get started with SSH. So I will straight away go to my terminal command, and in order to access SSH remotely, we will have three ways of doing it. Either you can access a computer which is residing in the same network as your home or your office, or number two, you can access, let's say, Amazon Web Service, which allows you a lot of configuration for that remote machine sitting somewhere out there provided by the web service provider. Or thirdly, very commonly, it might be your web service host provider that might give you SSH access. So for this purpose of the episode, we will be accessing a remote machine which is right in my home network. Now, even before we do that, let's try to know a little bit more about SSH. So in order to see what version SSH is in a Mac OS operating system, it is there by default. So we can just do SSH and then -v, and let's see what that gives us. That gives us, there you go, some version numbers, and that kind of tells us, hey, SSH is installed. Also, we can see which is the directory that SSH is being fired from, and we can do it with which SSH. And lastly, what we can do is we can also check out the manual for SSH, which is also very helpful in a lot of the SSH commands. And to do that, it's man SSH. And there you have it, some of the very similar commands. We can navigate it with up and down arrow. And of course, finally, we can press Q to exit it. Alright, so that's a little bit background about SSH. Finally, the last thing that we will do is explore this folder where everything to do with SSH resides. And that folder is basically residing in the home directory, and it's called .ssh. Currently, it is completely empty. So we will be doing a lot with this folder, and we'll be adding in files for configurations and keys in this folder. Alright, so now let me just open up a new tab, and over here I will try to log into my remote machine which is in my home computer. Now usually for SSH, if you want to log into any remote machine anywhere in the world, the syntax, the command is usually SSH and then username at host name. Alright, so for our purpose, the username will be my name. And then I have an IP address 10.0.1.21. In your case, it might be domain.com or whatever the web service host has provided you. All right, so in that case, let's do this. .1.21. And when we do that, the very first time we log in, it will tell us, are you sure you want to add in this authentication? So what this is doing is that the server is trying to authenticate you as the user. Now notice firstly, before I click yes, that my .ssh folder is completely empty. All right, so I'm just gonna press here yes, and it's being added, and it also prompts me for a password. So I'll just put in the password, whatever password you have put in for the remote computer, and we are logged in. And there you go, we have a new bash prompt as well. And if I do ls, you see very familiar home directory folders right here. So basically you are actually executing these commands in another machine sitting right in the current machine. Now if I go on to the SSH folder, let's see what happens. Notice that a known host file is created. So let's look at once again what happened here. It tried to add the fingerprint, and what I'll do is I'll just open up this folder in Sublime Text, and there you have it. Our .ssh folder was completely empty, and now we have a known host. And notice here, first it starts with the host name, which we were trying to log in, and then it has a long string of numbers, which is basically the encrypted number key that allows us to log in. So that's what it will create for the very first time. And now that we are logged in, we can very simply log out by this command. Now, won't it be nice if we try to log in, it won't ask us for the password. Now when we try to log in the second time, we will see that it will not give us that message that hey, we are trying to add in the fingerprint, but it will ask us for the password. And we are logged in. So let me log out once again, and this time what we will do is, instead of using a password, which is just a one more step process, we will try to use this key generated. So we will have two keys. One is the private key that will reside on the client or my current computer, and then we will have the public key, which I will give it to the server. So let's see how that happens. So right now I am in the .ssh folder, and I will try to generate this key. To generate the key, we will do SSH-keygen, and then I will give it a type as RSA, and I'll also give it a file name. So give me a file name as SSH, so that I don't confuse with other types of key generated, let's say for other remote machines. And I'll also give it a comment, and just to recognize who is the user, I'll just put in my email as well. Right, so this is how you generate an encrypted key. And it will also ask you for a password, so put in your password or passphrase, and there you have it. They will say that hey, your identification has been saved and your public key has been saved in .pub, and you also have a fingerprint and also a random image art. So let's look at our SSH folder once again. And there you have it. It has created, the command keygen has created two keys. Notice it is SSH and then a long string of numbers. Notice that this is the format of a public key, and the server has also sent us the similar public key to us, so that it can authenticate us. Now it is our turn to authenticate the server. So this is the .pub, and this is our private key that will stay in our machine. So it's a bit like a lock and key mechanism. All right, so what we will do is we will take this and then we will bring it to the server machine. So next what we will do is just to give a little bit of background, what's the significance of fingerprint and the random art. Now as you notice, for humans at one glance it is very difficult to kind of match this long string. So SSH keygen kind of provides this little random image art that is much easier for us to compare. And if you want to see how to generate this 16 digit number here, what we can do is SSH-keygen-L-F, and then we can give the name learn.ssh.pub. And notice here the number 9E:A0 is exactly the same as the keygen generated fingerprint. Alright, so next, as we said, we will be copying this learn.pub that we generated to our server. So I'm sitting in my client in the .ssh folder, and I will be securely copying this file into the server. And to securely copy, the command is scp-p, and then we can do learn.ssh.pub, and then of course I will do the same as username at the host name. And after I type in the host name, I will put a colon just to indicate that, hey, I want this file to be inside the home directory. Now before I press enter, let me just go and log in to my server, which is SSH username and then the host name. And I'll just do a listing to ensure that, hey, I don't have a learn.ssh.pub anywhere on the home directory. Alright, so now I will do a secure copy. Let's see what happens. It will ask for a password once again. Alright, so it says that it has been transferred 100%. So now I will come to my remote machine and let me do an ls. And guess what? Learn.ssh.pub has been transmitted to the home directory of my remote machine. Next, what I will have to do is copy the contents of learn.ssh.pub into this file called authorized keys that resides inside the .ssh. So to do that, I'll do cat and then learn.ssh.pub, and I will go inside the home directory and then .ssh, and then there is this file called authorized _ keys. So I'll just put a greater than sign here just to say that, hey, copy it all here. Right, and now what I'll do is I will just print out the content for this folder, and there you have it. I have added this learn SSH.pub just to make a little bit of quick comparison. If you see here, I have AAA and then B3N, and I also have AAA 3BN. So notice once again what happened. I copied this learn.ssh.pub to my remote machine, and then I copied the contents inside this pub file inside this file called authorized keys. So it basically says that me as the user is authorized to log in to the remote machine. Alright, so now the next thing we have to do is make this file accessible by SSH, and to do that we have a little uncommenting to do, and the configuration of the SSH resides in this file. So I'll just do sudo and then nano. Nano is a text editor, and then I'll go into /etc/ssh/sshd_config, and once again it will give us this configuration file that deals with SSH, and we are typically looking for the line to uncomment the line. There you go, I have found the line. This basically says authorized keys file. Make sure this authorized _keys file is available. So currently this is commented out, so I will just uncomment it. Alright, so I'm using a nano editor, so I'll just Control X to exit, and yes, save changes and enter. Alright, so there you go. I have edited the SSHD config file so that authorized keys is available for SSH to know who are the users that can access the remote machine. Alright, so let me just log out. And this time I will try to log in once again, and it should not ask me for the password because, hey, I have given them the public key. But guess what? It is still asking me for the password. So what I'm going to do is kind of see what goes on. So this time when I try to log into SSH, I will give it a verbose mode, which means it will spit out the messages and not just give a blank screen to see what is the process of logging in. So when I try to do that, notice what happens right at the end. It tries to look for a file .ssh id_rsa, but in fact what it should be looking for is learn ssh.pub. So let me log out of this, and I will now come back to my client right here, and this time we will add in a file called config inside the .ssh folder. Alright, so I do not have that, so let me just add in config file, and this time I will try to add in the host name, the username, and the public key file to use. So let's go inside the Sublime Text and try to edit this. So the first line in the config file will be host, and in this case I'll just give it a name and I'll call it Ubuntu Box. And the next line is host name, and here I'll give it the IP address. And the next one is the username. And lastly is the identity file. And this is where I will add in home directory SSH. Please look for the file learn SSH instead of id_rsa. And this time when I try to log in, all I need to do is SSH and then just the name, which is Ubuntu Box. And guess what? I'll just have to authorize the key, and I am inside my remote machine. So if I log out, and all I need to do is just SSH Ubuntu Box, and guess what? No password and nothing. It will just make me log in immediately. Just the first time you will have to press the password for the key. That's it. So Amazon Web Service also provides us with a lot of infrastructure and configurations so that we can actually own a part of a remote machine and do a lot of playing with it. So what I'll do is aws.amazon.com, and over here I will get inside my management console and go to EC2, which is Elastic Computing. And inside here I will go under instances. Right now I have no instances, so I will launch an instance and I'll just use the wizard. Continue, and I'll choose a free tier, Ubuntu server once again, select, and I can just continue here. Continue once again in step 2, instant details. Continue to create the key pair, and this time I will create a key pair and I will say learn SSH AWS, create and download your key pair, and continue. Launch, right? Close, and over here we will see running shortly. Right, so now that it's running, I will just do a little check and come down right over here, and we'll be using the public DNS, this little string here, to log in SSH into this machine that we just instantiated. Right, so let me come back to my terminal once again, and this time let me just go back to my desktop. And over here I will copy the learn SSH AWS.pem that I downloaded. So I'll just copy learn SSH and I will move it to the .ssh folder. Right, and now if I go inside .ssh, we will see that I have this learn SSH AWS PM, which is a public key once again. Right, so now using this, we will try to log into the remote machine inside AWS. So to do that, we'll do SSH and then -I to go into interactive. And we will have to put in the full path, and then we will do something similar, which is user @ and we will copy the public DNS. Right, and let's press enter. And as usual, for the very first time when we try to do it, they will try to add the key fingerprint. Alright, they will give us a warning. This is because when we do an ls, when we try to check the permission for learn SSH AWS, we will see that it is readable by all the users. So let's go ahead and change the permissions first. So to do that, we will do chmod 600 And now when I want to check the permissions, notice that it is not readable by this. So let me just put some up arrows and we will try to log into Amazon once again. And there you go, I have logged in. So let me just clear the screen for you once again. And I have a remote machine inside Amazon Web Services. So let me just log out once again. Now notice when we did this SSH, this command was really huge. So we did SSH and then we referred to the key that we want to use to authenticate, and then of course the username and then the host name. Wouldn't it be useful to just do SSH and then maybe AWS? So let's go ahead and do that. So to do that, we will use the same config file. So let me just copy and paste it once again, and I will just change the host to, let's say, AWS. Host name in this case will be the public DNS. So I'll just come back to EC2 and copy this, paste it here. User name will be Ubuntu, and this time the identity file will be the one we got from AWS, which is learnssaws.pm. Right, so now that our config file is set, all we need to do next time is SSH and then AWS. Let's see what happens. And there you have it. The remote machine in AWS is logged in right now. So we did not have to put in any password or even a long command to get access. So I hope it gave you some overview about SSH, how to remote log in into any machine, either it's your home computer or a web server provided by your web host, or even a service like Amazon Web Services. Finally, before we go into the build link of the episode, let me just go through some of the SSH related links. Now, of course, there are two links which are written by the NetTuts Plus, one of my favorite website, SSH What and How. It talks about SSH in relation to web development. Of course, there's another one on using Git and GitHub and SSH, so it will be really useful. There is also another link that I have added to the show notes, that is 30 epic resources on SSH with lots of commands and useful cheat sheets and links. There is also two part. There is 101 uses of OpenSSH part 1, and there is another on part 2. Alright, so I hope this gives a big overview about SSH, and you'll be able to use shorter commands without password and yet protected, secured manner to log into SSH. Right, and lastly, for the build link of the episode, it goes to Hack5. Alright, so Hack5 is hosted by Darren Kitchen and Shannon Morris. It's one of my favorite tech show. Darren Kitchen is very well informed about such things as SSH and network and security and authentication, and the shows in general have very different topics as compared to web development or software development. So if you want to get inside things like operating systems like Linux, if you see here, or even things like hacking, so Darren Kitchen is definitely the guy to check out. Do check out Hack5 and subscribe via iTunes, and definitely follow Darren Kitchen in Twitter. He has definitely a lot of knowledge about network and other issues in technology, which I feel I'm lacking so much, and so much to learn from Darren Kitchen. Right, so that's it for this episode. Subscribe to Hack5 and learn about SSH, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.